But first, I am honored to introduce tonight the lovely and talented Nina Garcia. Born in Barranquilla, Colombia, Nina Garcia is the fashion director at Marie Claire magazine, as many of you know. You may also know her as the judge on Project Runway. Previously, she was fashion director at Elle magazine. She has done too many wonderful things to mention here in a few minutes. But let me just say, because I believe we have a lot of FIT students in the audience tonight, Nina was also a student at FIT. Nina has written books on fashion herself, so who better to help us with this wonderful evening? We are grateful to her, so help me welcome Nina Garcia.
Buenas noches, good evening. I am so honored to be here tonight. I'd like to start with one word, timeless. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the name Toledo. Timeless fashion, timeless art, timeless love. Reading Isabel's book, I couldn't help but think it was kind of like a Gabriel Garcia Marquez story, only about fashion. There's a sense of magical realism to her life story that is not only transcendent, but also, you guessed it, timeless. Now, we can't talk about Isabel without mentioning Reuben. So intertwined in their artistry and success that it is hard to tell where Isabel ends and Reuben begins. As individuals, they are extraordinary, and together they are invincible. I consider myself extremely fortunate to have been able to work at least with half of the team. They're arguably one of the most creative couples of this generation. And I wouldn't be surprised if years from now there would be some Oscar-winning movie about their lives. I'm sure, it's in the works. I've been a fan of Isabel's work since the beginning of her career. She has been hailed as a designer's designer. She has, for her soulful and loving approach to fashion. I am forever impressed by her attention to construction, working from the inside out of the garment. By working at her own pace and following her own sets of rules, Isabel Toledo has aligned herself with designers such as Madame Vionnet, Azzedine Alaïa, designers who continually captivate audiences for years and years to come, but they do it by their own rules. There is no flashy Isabel Toledo flagship on Madison Avenue or grand runway spectacle every season. And yet this is a woman who is embedded in our history books forever. Even those beyond the fashion world know her name thanks to a single look, a lemongrass dress suit worn by Michelle Obama to the president's inauguration. When I heard that Isabel's dress was on the First Lady, I felt a huge sense of victory, not only as a woman, but as an immigrant myself. While Barack Obama stood for hope and change, the First Lady dressed in their very image. Again, there was a Gabriel Garcia Marquez quality to the First Lady Isabel's design. It was kismet. No other designer could have dressed Michelle Obama more perfectly for that monumental moment. It was a timeless moment. That's like Isabel's story, and her designs will survive long after we are gone. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome my dear friend, Isabel Toledo, and her husband, Reuben. but what compelled you to write this book, Isabel, and why now?
You know, I've said all the time, I don't know. And I had to really think about this, like why. I just really felt it was important for me to share my experience right now. The experience of a life really lived for creativity and what it takes to go through your life wanting to constantly create. I mean, as a child, I remember constantly wanting to make up things, and my solutions was always more creative than the object itself. So I felt that I wanted to connect where I came from, the travels, to what I do today, how it all connected, and how I mapped that into my life and into my career. I mean, I wanted the world to understand, especially students and creative people, to understand that you don't have to have all the right answers, to have all the connections, to have the big business behind you. If you look at your own life and it's something that you love to do, it's there for you. You can just express yourself and you'll succeed.
So many students ask us, how do you get from here to there? And that's I think that's a missing link today. Just the idea that through your creativity and through your passion and through your vision, you can achieve. Because there's a great big audience waiting for creativity.
And I have heard Isabel and Ruben speak at many fashion events. And it's very emotional to hear you. I'm so happy this book happened. That's what I'm trying to come to. Because it's very emotional to hear you talk about fashion. And it's very inspirational to hear you guys talk about fashion. And it's so incredible for the young generation to hear.
You've got to realize that for us, and for me especially, fashion is not a career, it's not a business, it's a love affair. I love fashion. I love the industry of fashion, in fact. That's why I felt it was important to even write about it. And write about how the life of fashion was during my time and where it is today, where it's changing. Although fashion is always changing, I felt there was a link that I needed to make so that the next generation knows that there's also other ways of success. So,
now, writing a book is a very introspective process. What are some of the things you learned about yourself during that process, and what was the most difficult part of writing this book?
What did I learn about myself? That's a hard one.
Well, I think she learned that words are her friends, first of all, because
yes,
she's not a very
incredible.
She would kind of tell a story in 3 words and we call it a day, and I said, no, you have to kind of tell us more.
Flesh it out.
So I think she learned to make friends with words.
For me, my creativity is 3-dimensional. It's all about the make. I see everything in a very 3-dimensional way. For me, words are flat, unless you get you get a writer that can turn that again into a 3D effect. I felt totally intimidated, but I have to say, Penguin, Ray Garcia, for trusting that I had something to say, that he felt I wanted to do this, and he convinced us.
Yeah,
it wasn't easy, I have to admit.
Now, what was the most difficult chapter? What was the most difficult
part?
Forget that. What was the most difficult part to touch on?
Me?
Ruben, come on. Well, let's go. Yeah. Let's ask about it. How did you guys meet? How did this happen?
Well, we met in high school Spanish class when I was 13 years old, and it was love at first sight for me. Now, for Isabel, it took me 30 years to finish. So I'm very patient and a little weak, but yeah, it was love at first sight for me. So I just had she didn't pay attention to me romantically till after high school.
I fell in love with his art.
It's kind of
No,
yeah.
that moment of going from friendship and loving what he represented to loving a man was something that I just could not. It was hard. It was really hard to touch on that very personal.
But I have to say, I recommend to any young creative kids out there do date another artist, because I think it's a very strong relationship.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any other way.
You have a whole chapter in your book about love and time. And there is a wonderful quote. I can remember it. Here, yes, I have it here. You say, love is often the missing link in life. Once that element flowers, the rest of life seems to flow along.
And with love, you can do anything. Everything is possible. You don't mind the hardship. You don't mind the hard things that you have to go through, or the easy. I mean, it all becomes, it is like a flower blooming. You you see the outcome of what you've done when you do it with love. I mean, that is, I think that's how we do everything.
Well, I think that's the love is the spark that lights the match that brings into creativity, or it makes things flower. You know, without that, you're faking it. I think. You know,
And she has a green thumb.
Very.
So now you guys work so beautifully together. Is there a moment when Ruben and you disagree on something creatively?
Constantly.
Constantly.
People
Well, but there you go. That's why love is important.
Are there some big, like, Spanish fights going on?
Always. There's always a tornado fight going on in the house. But no, we have very aesthetically, we're very different. People assume that you have to be similar to work together. In fact, I think the friction is very good. We always are we come to an agreement, but from two different angles constantly. You know, we're very aesthetically different. And
that's part of what feeds us. It really is part of what feeds. Actually, creativity is about that. It's the spark.
Is there a time when you have seen her design and been like, that's not going to
Oh,
work?
sure. Always.
Well, yeah, I'm going to do it this way.
No, not I would do it this way.
I don't do what she does. No, I don't do what she does.
No, but yes, I don't see it.
But remember, I do sell a collection, so I have to deal with the buyers and the editors. So there are those ugly ducklings that I can't bear to look at and I can't try to hide them. But sure enough, I've learned the hard way that she transforms these ugly ducklings into something magical. So I'd love to trust that. You know, there's an alchemy and a metamorphosis to fashion that the masters have. That they know that it's not born beautiful. Some things are, and some things
That's what love does.
become beautiful.
Now, Isabel, do you ever get involved with Ruben's art? Would you ever see
No,
something?
that's the interesting part. We do get involved, and when we don't see eye to eye on something, actually it makes us work a little harder, or makes us want to express more so that the other one sees it. And at one point, if we don't, it's like, okay. Well.
No, but she's the one that makes my sculptures stand
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Not that we fall over in 3 seconds, and she's the one
I'm a
that
construction worker.
She's also a very good editor. I'm a terrible editor. I'm Mr. Baroque, the more the better. Like, I want 50 ideas at once, and Isabel's very good at focusing and letting that one important thing happen. So I think that's what you're very good at.
Well, I let things speak to me.
Isabel, where do you think your passions come from? Where do you think this passion came from? Like, going back, I mean...
Obsession? For me, it's probably a delicious obsession, a delightful obsession, but it probably, I mean, what is passion? I mean, where does passion come from? I would imagine it's someone's obsession with things that drive you to do this no matter what. Wait.
Isabel's sometimes work on an underarm gusset or something that we would never see in a million years on a product, but she's completely obsessed by that one little triangle and this one little spot inside that you never see, but that makes the whole thing valuable.
Well, that is the newness in the garment. To me, that's what is. I always look for that one thing that makes it identifiable to me, why I'm making it. If I'm going to make a white shirt, I'm going to make sure that white shirt has some line or some point of view that, or point of reference of design that is mine. Because it's not.
Yeah, there's got to be innovation.
And I do think that yes, we all have to have an obsession to be in this business, because it's not an easy business.
Actually, any business.
Yes, any business, you're right. Now, what was that, what interests you in, I know that you started by sewing, but what was that, why? How did that come about? I mean, I know you go into it in the book, but I want you to tell the audience a little bit, like, what started you, that fascination with that sewing machine?
Well, sewing machine, I was fascinated by the architecture of it, what it looked like, visually. The fact that I can go in, the three-dimensional, all the things that, all the pulleys, everything that I can play with, it became a world. I didn't know it was a sewing machine, I didn't know what it did. My grandmother, it was a sculpture, yes. A beautiful sculpture, my grandmother didn't sew. It wasn't hers, it was someone else's, so I just loved what this thing represented. And it's strange, that's why, again, I wrote the book, because I recognize what I am today. Really, when you think of the map of Isabel Toledo, it is very connected to the very beginning, how I fell in love with a machine, but I didn't know what it did. It was a sewing machine. And how all of a sudden, I was surrounded, my town totally influenced me, how I see color, how I sense emotions, really from the light of where I come from. The fact that I was surrounded by women, I love all the women around me, all the shapes, all their ways of expressing their fashion. And that, what would you ask me?
How did you become interested in sewing and creating?
So they know you saw the accident, yes.
That's what I wanted.
But why a babysitter? I was always very thin.
That was very clever, actually. I might use that with my children. You're a very talented babysitter.
My mother actually tricked us into going to a babysitter. She said it was sewing lessons, and I found out with it. So all the three girls, my two sisters and I, went to a babysitter, and my sister hated it, and I loved it.
And what was that first item you created? Do you remember?
As a dress, yes. A taupe. I was like 10, a taupe dress. Like a trapeze, really cute, all top stitch. It was all about showing what the dress looked like on the stitching. You know, that's what I just did. It was like drawing the dress.
It was almost drawing with the stitching, you know? I think
So even back then, you were fascinated by that
The lines.
lines and the inside out
Yes.
creation.